if I had to sum up in one word, like as far as what motivates my work, I'd say it's curiosity. In its broadest form. My name is Michael Smoot. I teach printmaking here at Keene State College and also teach printmaking at Smith College. The reason I believe in printmaking's potential for sustained collaborative effort, negotiation of difference, and creative collective action is the print studio is a microcosm in which you have a bunch of different people with different points of views, different worldviews, different lived experiences, having to work together towards a common goal, either their own individually or collectively as a group. In this space where you have people who have different working styles, some maybe are a little bit messier than others, some maybe a little bit neater, both those ways of being have to exist simultaneously. And the process of negotiating that, working that out, has implications, and it has ramifications in how we interact in the world at large. And so it seems kind of trivial in a way, this idea of like, look, I'm going to make some prints, put some ink on paper with a bunch of the people in a room. But the implications of that are great. And that's why I really enjoy printmaking and enjoy teaching it, to help students work those things out. So my work is based on like an exploration of these various ideas and kind of an interrogation of our structures in society and the ideas that inform them. So like most people, I got into art, started art as a little kid, coloring, drawing. I was really big into dinosaurs, so I used to make my own little dinosaur books, hand color all the stuff and name them. And I just kept making art. In high school, I was a part of the National Art Honor Society, and I was also part of like a weekend program. It was pretty intense. We'd go 6 hours every Saturday, very rigid, from like 9 to 3, half-hour lunch, and the rest of the time working in the studio. From there, I went and applied to Towson University, and it's in Maryland, just north of Baltimore. I received 2 scholarships, one for my academics and one for my portfolio submission. And so I felt like beholden to like always maintain like my activity in arts because of that scholarship I received, but I also had many other interests. So if you look at my transcript, it's a mess. I began on the pre-med track, sociology, history, early childhood education, just all over the place. There's one instance I was in a lecture, it was a philosophy class, and this like big jock guy, like I was taking my notes and kind of drawing on the margin, and he leaned over and he was like, "That's very nice shading." And that comment like spurred me on to should I get back in the studio and focus on my artwork. And at that time I kind of had an epiphany. Like regardless of my disparate interest, art was kind of wide open and allowed me to engage with any topic I wanted to through my art. So I could use my artistic creation, the process of making, my practice, as a way to interrogate and explore my varied interests. So I was a painting major for undergrad. On paper, in my junior year, I got interested in printmaking, and I was hooked. I just really enjoyed the collaborative nature of the studio, working together with people, working collaboratively, like being able to help people with problems, troubleshoot stuff. And so despite still getting my undergrad degree in painting, my junior year I was totally hooked on printmaking. So for the piece, 24 Propositions, it was based on using CMYK colors to represent four fundamental forces in a standard model of quantum physics. Gravity, nuclear weak force, nuclear strong force, electromagnetism. So it's based on the Big Bang. And so in the Big Bang, there were these four fundamental forces that were kind of all mashed together in one. And as time went on and things cooled down, they separated. Now, we're talking fractions of a second here. And so it always really interested me, like, how do you depict that? How do you show that, like, visually? So I relied on CMYK printing processes, which is like a 4-color printing process, which works out because there are 4 fundamental forces. And use each of the colors in CMYK, which is cyan, magenta, yellow, and black, to kind of act as a placeholder for each of those 4 fundamental forces. So the 24 propositions, so it's a factorial, like there's 24 different ways you can arrange those 4 different colors in terms of layering. And so that series depicts each of those 24 different ways of layering those colors. And so despite that each of those prints uses the same 4 colors, depending on layering and placement, they look pretty different. So the Nebula series, I haven't given them the proper titles yet because we're still working on them. Same thing, I'm still using the same CMYK color process, creating a series of kind of cloud forms. And the way I did those, I did various drawing. I took pictures of various washes I created, like physically, and then scanned those in and turned those into vector images or raster images in Photoshop, bitmapping them. And had a series of different screens, different films, and then they're perfect squares, and so I can rotate them like 90 degrees and get different orientations, but still using the same 4 colors, CMYK, and you get this multitude of this broad spectrum of colors. So nebula are clouds of gas and dust. It's how stars are created. So because of gravity, things coalesce and they ignite. You have stars. Stars create various elements. They explode, and then you can get like planets and whatnot. So the whole series is kind of a timeline, right? So we start at the very beginning, the Big Bang, and now we're getting to the creation of nebula, and as the series progresses, we're going to get into life on Earth, various epochs and eras in the geological timescale, and looking at how all of these things evolve. So beyond like working in the studio and making various prints and doing editions, I feel it's very important to engage with the local community and to kind of share that information and experience with various like people. So one of those events I worked on was called Print Big in Atlanta. That was like with students. That was when I was in Georgia, Valdosta State University. It was a program put together through the Atlanta Printmakers group. It's a studio. Invited various colleges from around the area to come and do some large-scale relief prints. Typically, for relief prints, we print on like an etching press, a smaller scale. These were 4-foot by 8-foot sheets of MDF that we printed with a steamroller. So what we did for that is had a group of students got together, came up with design collectively, collaboratively, got the design transferred onto the block, carved it together, then carted it up to Atlanta, and printed it with another college, Kennesaw State University, to make our large print. Another project I worked on was Empty Bowls. That was at Bennington College. That was a series of screen prints that I produced. It was 5,000 screen prints for a project with the artist there. Her name is Yoko Inoue. She's a ceramics teacher, but also does a lot of social practice work. What that means is she'll go out in the community and work with local stakeholders, whether that be nonprofits, governmental agencies, to develop projects that help better the community. So Empty Bowls was a project dealing with food insecurity. So Bennington College is a very kind of like well-off private school, and it's kind of insulated from the outside world of Bennington, the town. And the town of Bennington, while very nice, does have its issues like many towns. A major one is the opioid crisis and epidemic, and the effects of that on local school children, which lead to things like food insecurity, various traumas that come along with dealing with like opioid addiction within the family. So this Empty Bowls project printed a bunch of kind of placemats on which people wrote down various recipes, various like ways to cook different items, and also it served as a catalyst for communication and dialogue by people who were at this community meeting. So that was like a way of using the ability to create multiples that printmaking allows for to generate this object that was used in service of a greater dialogue. Another project that I worked on was with VECA, or the Valdosta Early College Academy. That's also in Valdosta, Georgia. What that was, I worked with a couple of students that were in our ed program. It was basically their kind of concept, like their idea. So we partnered with the local high school, which its main mission is to get students who come from families that don't have any college graduates in the family, or anybody's who've dealt with higher education, to get them on the path to attending and graduating from college. So the overarching theme of this program is we're working with the English professor, or English teacher rather, and the students have just read To Kill a Mockingbird. And so our project, we use screen printing again to create three-dimensional shoes, and the students write out like ideas about how they perceive themselves, or how they're perceived by others, and then on the insole that was removable of this three-dimensional shoe we made, they wrote kind of like their personal feelings about their sense of self, with the idea, kind of cliche, but the idea of walking in someone else's shoes, and ideas of perception. It went really well. Students were really engaged with the printing process. They actually had to print their own little like templates to then cut out their shoes and construct them. And we had a discussion about the book that they're reading and the larger themes of the book. One final thought is the question as to why do printmaking? Like in a day and age where we have like laser printers, inkjet printers, and all kinds of digital technologies, why spend the time to grain a stone or carve a block? And for me, like, the answer to that question is, firstly, the engagement with the studio in shared space, working with other artists, collaborating, developing ideas together, so that communal spirit of the studio. And finally, and I think importantly, is a recognition of one's ability to create something with one's own hands. It's easy to be like seduced by all the technology we have available, iPads, tablets, phones, what have you, but there's a certain kind of magic when you spend multiple hours carving a block or prepping a plate, and you take that first reveal and you peel that paper back to see what you've made. And to me, that is highly valuable and worth pursuing.
All right, that's a wrap.